So Just Democrats have now joined up forces with several different groups. We talked about Brand New Congress before. Now all of us has joined Just Democrats. All of us are the folks who launched WeWillReplaceYou.org, and they were among the several different groups who were looking to keep corporate Democrats in check and hold them accountable. Well, that's exactly what Just Democrats are doing. So now, united, progressives fight back against the establishment. Sometimes it will have to be the Democratic establishment because they are far, far too conservative and too conciliatory towards Republicans. But eventually, obviously, the idea is to get to the Republicans and run real campaigns, populist, progressive campaigns against the Republicans so that we can actually win. Unfortunately, the corporate Democrats have a terrible, terrible track record. They've lost 69 out of 99 state legislatures, which is an amazing stat. They've lost the House of Representatives, they lost the Senate, they lost the White House to Donald Trump, they lost the Supreme Court. So get out of the way, get out of the way. Here come real progressives and the real Justice League. So let me give you a couple of quotes from the folks involved here. Just first of all, Waleed Shahid, who is now was one of the co-founders of All of Us, now the press director for Justice Democrats, says, "We believe the Democratic Party needs to stand with working class Americans of all races against the billionaires and politicians who divide and conquer us by pitting neighbor against neighbor. Well, we're not going to stand for that anymore." And I love it. Max Berger was the other founder of All of Us, and he is now also with the Justice Democrats. Shortcut Chakrabarty, who is executive director of Justice Democrats, says, "With all of us on our team, our number of supporters just doubled. Our grassroots-backed infrastructure is expanding to challenge the establishment's billionaire-backed infrastructure, and our populist message is already strong than their lack of forming." Information on this tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. The new progressive candidate who is going to defeat Dianne Feinstein. You're going to love that. And in fact, we're going to have election coverage. Yes, it's about a year before the 2018 elections, and yes, we are beginning on the Young Turks tomorrow, Thursday. Not only will we have that announcement, and we'll have a regular show 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, but 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern, a special 3-hour election coverage, where we will feature more than half a dozen Justice Democratic candidates, some here in the studio from California, and some through Skype from all across the country. Here come the progressives fighting for real change. Come and join us, and let's go win. All right, that's your important announcement that I want to do for you guys. Let's take a quick break here. John Iredell is going to join me next. Anna's coming later, but we've got Donald Trump politicizing the attacks in New York, and I will tell you something. We're not going to let their hypocrisy stand. So all of this ass-kissing for the NRA, and don't politicize, just thoughts and prayers. Now there's a terrorist attack. They rush into politicize. We're going to kick their ass when we come back. Cenk Uger, John Idaho with you guys. That was a quick segment, so we have two quick tweets for you guys. Joseph S. says Bruce Wayne will soon be running as a Justice Democrat. He's the candidate that Dems deserve, but not the one the establishment wants. Now, we do have a dramatic announcement for who the candidate is going to be. That's going to be tomorrow at the top of the show, so don't miss it. 6 p.m. Eastern, right here, tytnetwork.com/live. But I can tell you now, it will not be Bruce Wayne. Okay, that would be awesome, and one day. I Am Sock says, just Democrats and all of us, too strong.
Oh God, it's gone one step farther.
Too strong. The first two was spelled TWO, and I like how that was framed. Agreed. Let's go win. All right, what's next?
Okay, the news is next. Trump wasted no time following yesterday's terror attack in New York City. Initially, talking about how this was proof that we need to stop people from the Middle East coming into our country. Then an aide explained that Uzbekistan is not, in fact, actually in the Middle East, and so he backed off a little bit and talked more generally about how extreme vetting needs to be stepped up, saying that being politically correct is fine, but not for this. Assuming that's sarcasm there at the end, because he doesn't think it's fine. And so then the morning came, and he got his daily intelligence briefing from Fox and Friends, and they told him about this program, the Diversity Visa Lottery Program. And they talked about it in depth, especially the diversity part. For reasons you might be able to guess, here is a little mashup.
As you stated clearly, the diversity program on the visas has got to be shut down. Talk a little bit about the diversity visa program, diversity visa lottery. The fact that we would have a diversity program open to allow people to come in, it's insane.
Chuck Schumer attached to the immigration bill back in 1990. It has been suggested that Chuck Schumer, now a U.S. Senator, was one of the sponsors. Lebanon is where you're from, right?
Yes,
they are part of the visa lottery program.
The diversity visa program, the reason this was even established is to offer to countries with low rates of immigration into the United States.
Lottery system, I've always been against it because it's a random system to bring people into the United States. It's not merit-based. His diversity visa proposal, also known as the green card lottery, is it time to really get both Democrats and Republicans to end this program today?
How much more diversity do you want? And we got to make sure that we are doing the vetting, and that's what's failed. We failed to vet people.
Calling for higher vetting in high threat areas, and eventually the travel ban came out of that. The president last night, Dan, suggested we needed more super vetting, essentially. Is he right? To abolish this program and put a merit-based system into the United States.
What do we need? A diversity program on visas. Diversity visa program.
Vetting is the answer. The president also has tweeted out about how we need better vetting, extreme vetting. He's right about that, isn't he?
There will be a component of vetting. Should it be lottery? Should it be even normal visa? When you go overseas and you hear about vetting, don't for a second think you're walking into the Syrian Department of Motor Vehicles and getting a list of parking tickets this person's got for 15 years.
I don't know why we even have this anymore, considering the fact that one of the 9/11 pilots applied for this twice.
But what is missing is basically this one program of vetting. Vetting what? What are you going to ask for a library card in Uzbekistan?
Well, I think there are a lot of people who now are learning about the diversity visa program. They don't like it.
How about a United States first immigration program? The previous administration did not choose to have vetting. Get rid of the visa, this lottery program.
So would a United States first immigration program prioritize people coming here from the United States?
Okay, so let's break down all the absurdities. First, I want to go back to what John said, which was really funny. He's like, Uzbekistan has a problem with the Middle East. It's the Central Asia, idiot. That's the problem with the Central Asian republics that are part of Russia's sphere of influence. Wait, no, I meant Uzbekistan is great, except for the Muslims. They're almost all Muslim. Okay, they're bad, but somehow they're associated with Putin, so I might have to retract these comments later. Okay, so then we go to the green card lottery. Now, it's not really true that Schumer was necessarily in favor of the green card lottery. We'll get into that. Okay, but I am. I think the green card lottery is fantastic.
How much more diversity do you want? By the way, an angry man screaming, how much more diversity you want, is peak Fox News.
That's right. And actually, and of course, getting minorities to do it is also Fox News 101. We have brought a Lebanese guy. He looks like and he speaks like he's from the Middle East. In reality, of course, he's paid by think tanks and other organizations to sell out everyone who looks and speaks like him. And so we brought this shill here to speak out against everyone else from his neck of the woods. Now, if we'd, of course, killed the diversity program before his ass got in here, he'd be in the middle of Beirut somewhere. But since he's already made it, he'd like to burn the bridge down right after him, because that's the kind of people that Fox News loves, right? And then we'll get an African-American guy on here and go, what kind of diversity do we need? I already got paid by Fox News. I'm counting the cash. I don't need any more diversity. I already got paid. Okay, that's very nice for you. You must be so goddamn proud. Now let's go to the substance here of, I thought we weren't politicizing tragedies. So this comes as a giant shock to me, because I remember this 8 people were killed here. That is, and we talked about it yesterday. I got friends in New York that scared me half to death because the kids were attacked, and they've got kids, etc. So now in Vegas, though, we had 59 people killed. We had over 500 people that were injured, 600 people shot overall. But don't politicize! Don't politicize!
I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, Sarah Huckabee Sanders addressed this today. Let's watch.
In the hours, and in fact the days after the horrific shooting in Las Vegas, the president repeatedly said, now is not the time to talk about policy, now is not the time to talk about politics, that's for another time. Right now we need to mourn the dead. Yet this morning the president launched into a political argument with Senator Chuck Schumer on Twitter, literally hours after this incident yesterday. Why was he so quick to go the political route and point fingers at Chuck Schumer for the fact that this person was in the country at all?
Well, look, this wasn't about going the political route. This is something that, frankly, the president's been talking about for a long time. This isn't a new policy. This isn't a new position. This isn't a new conversation. The president has been talking about extreme vetting and the need for that for the purpose of protecting the citizens of this country since he was a candidate, long before he was ever president. This isn't a new argument. This isn't a new position, and this wasn't new for the president to speak about it.
Okay, good. So you can have immunity to not politicize things so long as you talked about the issue before the attack. So thankfully, we've been talking about gun control here for any number of years, so we're free. We have the immunity idol.
Yes. Gun control was new after Vegas, apparently. Nobody was talking about it before. And right after Vegas, some scoundrels tried to talk about it. And then, of course, the Republicans had thoughts and prayers that are really, really important. And the only thing you should do after a tragedy, all of a sudden, no thoughts and prayers here, nothing but complete political action.
Hold on. So there, she doesn't actually define really why it's different between the Vegas response and this, but she is going to, in this next video, wait until you see what her rationale is.
I want to follow up on the question John was asking you earlier. You're making the case that these are not new policies he's talking about. And yet the question still remains. He is delving into a policy and political discussion. And he, as you were very clear after the Las Vegas shooting, that it wasn't appropriate to talk about policy. So what's the difference now?
I said it wasn't appropriate to politicize the conversation, which I don't believe we are. We're talking about protecting American lives.
The president invoked Chuck Schumer's name, so how can you argue that it's not a political argument he's making?
Look, Senator Schumer has supported these opposing policies, and I think that that is a very basic fact.
Okay, so there's a second rule. So you had to have been talking about it before the attack, and you can only target people who are opposing the things that you think would solve the problem. I think we can find some Republican politicians who that would qualify for gun control. But I am glad to know that in this case, we're talking about saving American lives. Those of you out there who thought that maybe after Vegas we could at the very least eliminate bump stocks and things like it, whose sole purpose is to allow you to effectively break the law by creating an automatic weapon, that wasn't supposed to save American lives, nothing like that.
30,000 people die every year from guns in America. So you want to talk about saving American lives? And this is what really enrages me about the attention span in this country. Now here, you've got the press doing a pretty good job of holding them accountable on their hypocrisy. And yes, the Vegas shooting certainly got plenty of coverage. But when there's terrorist attacks from right-wingers, it's always a one-off. It's a mentally deranged person, etc. And okay, but when you have an attack by a Muslim person, it's wall to wall. We have to change all the policies. We have to attack all the politicians on the other side. We have to change everything.
Change it today, they said on Fox.
So what I would like is consistency. So what would be the consistent thing to do? First of all, if you want to save and protect American lives, the first thing you should talk about is guns, because that costs 30,000 lives a year. That is 10 9/11s every single year. So if you want to prioritize, that should be your number one priority. How do we minimize the amount of lives lost from guns? Because it is an epidemic of gun violence in this country. Okay. So then, secondly, when you go to terrorism, should you discuss this? Of course you should. Should you try to find a way to combat what happened in New York? Of course you should. We all live here. Nobody wants to die. So we should fight terrorism. Now, when you go to fight terrorism, I think there's a good argument to be made on whether you should focus most of your efforts on right-wingers or Muslim radicals. Now, there are more right-wing terrorist attacks in this country than Muslim terrorist attacks by a good number. And you could ask the FBI, Homeland Security. Those are actual facts, and there's no question about them. On the other hand, Muslim radicals, unfortunately, are acting at a higher per capita ratio. So it's an interesting debate as to where we should spend our resources. And I would argue both, right? And maybe in equal proportion, even though there's more right-wing attacks. I can understand wanting to concentrate resources on a smaller number of individuals. That doesn't mean you should invade their mosques and houses and schools, but legitimate investigations with warrants, that would be great, so that we can stop radicals of all stripes from killing our fellow citizens. So, on the issue of politicizing, I might have a controversial opinion, which is, no, I think that all of these tragedies are political, and we should have political discussions about them immediately. It would be, the Republicans are hypocritical. They say, if it's guns, don't ever talk about it. Wait several weeks or months or years or never, right? But if it's terrorism, if it's right-wing terrorism, it's a lone wolf, never discuss it. If it's Muslim terrorism, let's go nuts.
If it's right-wing, say something about mental health, then do nothing about mental health.
That's exactly
Then move on.
That's right. Now, whereas we are consistent, if it's guns, you should do something about guns. If it's terrorism, you should do something about terrorism. And you shouldn't wait a week or 2 weeks or a month to talk about it. You should talk about it now. Yeah. 8 people just died in New York. I keep saying I got friends and family in New York. I don't want anybody to, and it doesn't matter if I don't have any friends or family. The right-wing terrorists who killed people attacking a Jewish community center in the middle of Kansas. I don't know anybody in Kansas, but I don't want that happening. And we should talk about it right afterwards.
Well, and certainly if you're going to say that your president is the guy who tells it like it is, but then when he actually tells it like it is, or at least he's politicizing it, that's what he's doing, you then say that he's not doing that, when in fact he's as politicizing it as you can. Like, you can politicize something as in, a shooting just happened, I'd say in general we need gun control. That's like level 1. Level 2 would be saying here's a specific law that we should pass. Level 3 is attacking a particular politician for a vote he made decades ago. There's no more political than that, but he won't actually own up to it. And as you said, there are these different types of terrorists. Now, what's interesting about this is their response isn't just political. That's not the problem with it. It's that it's nonsensical. Stopping that program wouldn't have stopped this guy because there's no evidence that this guy radicalized before coming here. The extreme vetting that you want isn't going to catch many of these people because they're not radicals when they come over here. They're radicalized in the United States. And that's not just true for people who are Muslim, that's true for the right-wingers as well. Obviously, they grow up here, they're radicalized here, and then they go in and shoot up a theater or a casino or whatever here. So what you have to do is track down, you have to stop the radicalization if you can, and if not, you need to investigate it here. And so what would you need to do that? You would need to fund programs that do that here. But not only are they not increasing funding of those programs, as we've reported throughout the year, they've in fact pulled funds from that for the exact sort of programs that would stop the Vegas shooting and things of that nature. That's what you need. Not to just have some stupid, emotional, knee-jerk, anti-immigrant response to every time a single person is killed in this country.
And that Lebanese guy on Fox News claimed that the last administration did no vetting at all. What a preposterous lie. We have the toughest vetting process in the entire world. It takes 18 months for a refugee to get through our vetting process. Literally the longest in the world. And that was true under Obama, Bush, etc. So for them to claim that we're not doing vetting is preposterous.
And ask yourself, if you want to put a guy in charge of extreme vetting who allowed a guy to be his campaign chairman, who is beholden to Russian and Ukrainian oligarchs and has broken any number of federal laws, and all of this just flew over our very wise president's head.
Yeah, all of a sudden, when it comes to you, no vetting at all.
No.
Oh, well, how could I know that all these different guys working for me were tied to Putin and the Russians? There's no way of knowing. I love extreme vetting. Oops.
There's another angle to this, by the way. So we found out today how they're going to respond to the attack yesterday, and it's not just going after this diversity visa lottery program. Trump also told reporters today that he would consider sending the terrorists to Guantanamo Bay. That's good. And the White House also said it considers him an enemy combatant because he was, of course, snatched from the streets of Fallujah. No, he's a guy that was in New York. What are you talking about? He's an enemy combatant. And as I tweeted earlier today, just like I want you to come to grips with the idea that Donald Trump gets to label people enemy combatants now.
So a little while back, a couple of right-wingers went and shot a couple of police officers in Nevada. And they said they were doing it for political reasons, and they laid the Gadsden flag on their dead bodies. Now, should we have called them enemy combatants? They wanted to kill our government officials because they hated this country so much, and they had a clear right-wing political opinion, and that's why they did it. Now, you might have heard about that story or barely ever heard about it at all, because if it's non-Muslim, we don't go wall-to-wall with coverage nonstop, and not every politician's talking about it. They're like, oh, yeah, right-wing terrorists murdered cops. I don't care about blue lives at all. Let's just move on, right? So that's basically how that story was treated. Should we have taken those guys and put them into Gitmo and treat them as enemy combatants? Of course not! Because they're here. It's on American soil. They committed an act. You see, unlike Donald Trump, I believe in our justice system. Oh boy, it's got a lot of issues, and I want to make it much, much better. And I have specific constructive fixes that I think we can do to the justice system. But overall, do I believe in that defendants should have rights? Yes. Do I think they should have habeas corpus? Yes. I believe in our Constitution and our justice system. I believe it could bring those monsters in Nevada to justice, and I believe that it could bring this monster in New York to justice. And if you don't believe in our justice system and you don't believe in our form of government, then you certainly shouldn't lead it.
So what do you think about him announcing today that he thinks our justice system is a joke and a laughing stock? Well, then, do you think he's talking about those well-reasoned criticisms of systemic racism in our justice system?
Yeah.
Or do you think it has something to do with the fact that we realized this week that 3 of his campaign staff, including the former campaign chairman, have been arrested?
Yeah, he's, I'm sure, talking about the two-tier justice system where people with affluenza are getting off for killing people, but if you're poor and you smoked a joint, you're going to go to prison for 20 years.
He's probably talking about overcrowded prisons and,
and how their
DAs are overworked.
And how they're giving people $1 a day to work. That's basically slave labor, okay? Yeah. No, he's not talking about any of that. He's saying, I'm powerful, and my elitist friends were arrested for doing something terribly wrong. How dare you arrest the rich and powerful? And then this guy, who is a terrible human being, who should be brought to justice in New York where he did the crimes, is like, I don't believe in our justice system. I hate the American justice system. That's what Trump said. He said it's a laughing stock. And John gave you the exact quotes there. So he hates our system. And he says, I don't believe in it. He wants to send it to Gitmo because Gitmo is lawless. He believes in lawlessness more than he believes in America and our Constitution. This guy's not fit to be our leader because he doesn't even believe in the concept of the country.
Do you want to go on to Chuck Schumer's response, or do you need to take our second break?
Let's go to Schumer's response.
Okay, so Trump attacked not only the diversity visa lottery program, but Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer specifically. Chuck Schumer responded both on social media and on the Senate floor. First, his tweet, I guess it's not too soon to politicize a tragedy. That's a good point there. But then he went on to say this.
I have always believed that immigration is good for America. I believe it today. President Trump, instead of politicizing and dividing America, which he always seems to do at times of national tragedy, should be bringing us together and focusing on the real solution, anti-terrorism funding, which he proposed to cut in his most recent budget. So, I am calling on the President Trump to rescind his proposed cuts to this vital anti-terrorism funding immediately.
That is a great example of the sort of thing that, for whatever reason, will not reach 32% of this country. That he literally cut the funding for these sorts of anti-terrorism investigations, and if you were to ask his core, his base, they would say he's the only one who's going to defend this, as he literally takes the money away so that he can give it to billionaires.
You know why? Because what's today? Wednesday? Because tomorrow he should go on CNN, MSNBC, ask Fox to get him on, and say it again. Then on Friday, do it again. Then on Sunday shows, do it again. And then hold a piece of paper that shows it and says, hey, this is what's going on, you guys. This is part of their bill to defund terrorists, anti-terrorism programs. And say it again, and say it again for the next 2 months. So they go, I wish Chuck Schumer would stop talking about this anti-terrorism thing that Donald Trump keeps cutting out of his budget. What's in his budget again? Oh, the anti-terrorism program that you keep cutting. Make sure they're tired of hearing it. You know those, I've been listening to a lot of talk radio lately because of the baseball, the World Series. And there's ads that run. They go, hey, contact us. That's johnplumber.com. 1-888-JohnPlumber.com. 1-888-JohnPlumber.com. And my kid's in the backseat going, why is he saying this 100 times? I said, so that you'll never forget it.
Yeah.
Same thing. Just do it over and over again.
Although, ironically, that might not have worked with you because I'm pretty sure 1-800-JohnPlumber.com is not the right thing. Okay.
You could set he is cutting anti-terrorism funds to that Cars for Kids tune. I don't think the country will ever get past it.
Okay, but to JR's point, so you might be thinking, especially if you're a MAGA guy and you got the red hat, wait a minute, I thought we really did want to fight the terrorists and the bad guys, and I thought, I mean, at a minimum, don't we all hate Muslims together? Right? I mean, that's like the core of MAGA, isn't it? So, why? Why are they doing that? And why did they add $70 billion to the defense budget, which was already gargantuan? It was already larger than 8 other militaries combined. Doesn't that cover it? No, because the defense budget goes towards defense contractors. So they make really expensive planes that we often don't use, really expensive submarines that half the time we don't use. And that is crony capitalism. Now, fighting terrorism, it's expensive, but maybe doesn't go to the right places, right? And why do they have to keep cutting the budget? Because they've got to finance the tax cuts. So tax cuts for the rich are a way higher priority for Trump and his administration than actually fighting terrorism. Yeah. That's why he cut those funds. And he figures, hey, it doesn't matter what I cut and what I actually do, and it doesn't matter how many trillions of dollars I give to my friends at the cost of your safety, because I'm just going to say on Twitter how we got to do extreme vetting. I hate the Muslims are the problem. I don't actually have to do anything about it. I just have to say it. And my knucklehead guys, I think that the red hats prevent the neurons from firing inside the heads. I think that is part of their secret purpose. Energy. Yeah. So all I have to do is scream about it on Twitter. They'll be like, oh, good enough. Yeah, I like it. He dislikes the same guys I dislike. This country. Okay. All right. We got to take a break, right? All right. The bombshell inside the Papadopoulos plea that might actually be enormous trouble for Donald Trump when we return. All right, post-game here in Studio B. It's a green screen magic of internet television. Oh, a lot of condom breaking stories. Any conversation that starts with marriage is an interesting thing deserves a little bit of...
When the kid cries, perhaps that's that is an opportunity to do something. It's an opportunity to do some parenting.
Yeah, parenting is you cry, you're gone.
Oh my God.
I love that video.
Yeah, man, I got a great eye. Chew. You're like, my mouth was open, she sneezed in my eye.
I used to have Donut Tower next to my desk. Yeah, I'll dress up like a girl.
I sound confident now, Anna. When we're off the air, I'm going to be like, how is this going to work?
When you get literally asked why 21 straight times.
Yeah.
And like, at some point, you're fucking with me now.
Right? So I dumped the kids off at her mom's, and I drove down to La Jolla for a day.
Get out, kids.
They're like, but Daddy,
No. Why? What do you mean why? You asked me to look at you. You did it. You brought it up. You know you're doing it. Why? I don't know why. I was reading. She's lovely. Here's what's different. Like, it is a different feeling. Everybody says this, but it's 5:11 when we're shooting this. I can't wait to go home. Like that. I can't wait to see it.
What you guys do is allow us to be open and honest, and we don't have to worry about censorship, and we don't have to worry about sponsors telling us what we can and can't say. We're accountable by our audience and our audience only, and I absolutely love that. That's the best part about being a member. We love you guys.
Hey, what's up? Aaron, what do you like better? The rabies or the rabies? Go.
We talk about TYT Army being so strong. Usually they help us run our show. Now they're going to help us run the country.
Like this.
It's time that we reclaim democracy for the people.
We had a huge victory for Wolfpack.
When Lincoln said this was a country by, of, and for, he said of the people, not of corporations.
Our representatives don't represent us. Whoa! Democracy!
United!
We are! We are! Too strong! Stop this. There's thousands of volunteers, and you can be among them.
With Wolfpack, the mission is so clear.
Money is killing our democracy. 96% of Americans want it. When you get the power back, oh, that feels good. This is just the beginning. Let's go get them, man. Up and at them. Knock, knock. We're coming for them! Wolf-pack.com.
I just shot a clip. It's time sensitive and it needs to be edited.
Did anybody call for it? Editor.
Need this in an hour. Jared, editor too. Fuck you.
Yes, indeed. There you go. Sorry, no more vowels. Take away. Yes, indeed.
All right, back on the Young Tourist, Jake and John with you guys. Let me do some tweets. Daniel Pareja says, but Vegas was a white man with a gun. Oh, okay. And I know that he's being sarcastic. And Venture says, I think extreme betting means rich people only. Diversity means poor people. Probably right. Because remember, Trump said, look, if they're going to contribute to the economy, there's certain visas that Kushner tries to use for his business, where if you can pay $500,000, they just let you into the country. Yeah. I got bad news for them, by the way. A lot of the bad guys in the Middle East have $500,000. Yeah. And the guys that did 9/11 were all sitting in first class. So I don't think that they actually care about your safety. It's some chances they just care about the money. So exactly right by that commenter. Bud Askins writes,
there needs to be a better vetting program for hiring Fox News contributors. And Mr. Charles says, if extreme vetting will solve terrorism, maybe Fox News should try extreme sexual harassment training. Ooh, burn! I like it. I like that a lot. Nice job. Okay, guys, remember tomorrow's big announcement, but I also want you to, about the Just Democratic candidate who is going to run against Dianne Feinstein. You've seen that person on air before. Here.
We need that alien.
Yeah, I think I got it. Oh, there. But also, we've got at least 7 other Just Democratic candidates that are going to come here. Me, John, Jimmy are going to do a 3-hour program after the main show tomorrow, so 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss it, including, I believe, the guy who almost beat Darrell Issa last time and will beat him this time. Okay, so let's go forward.
More news for you. It can be tough to keep up with all the revelations coming out of this week's arrests of multiple Trump campaign staffers, so we're going to jump right to the biggest one, and it has to do with George Papadopoulos. This is coming from the statement of the offense that was revealed earlier this week. On or about March 31st of 2016, Papadopoulos attended a, quote, national security meeting in D.C. with Trump and other foreign policy advisors for the campaign. When he introduced himself to the group, he stated in sum and substance that he had connections that could help arrange a meeting between then candidate Trump and President Putin. Now, this is going to be shorthand for us because we also know from other sections of it that he had barraged various members of the campaign with emails talking about wanting to set up a meeting. Then, after he had been told by his connections in Russia that they would do a meeting, asking for them to send people or possibly him. But this is an important one for today because this is at a meeting where Trump was present, as well as Jeff Sessions and others. Now, Clovis, which is a name you're going to hear in the near future, because he's up for the Agriculture Department, I believe. We'll see about that. And others at the meeting immediately expressed doubts about the wisdom of the idea, which is good. There were people saying it was not a good idea, noting that Russia was under U.S. sanctions and denouncing the optics of a meeting with Putin. And this is coming from the New York Times. But Trump listened with interest and asked questions of Papadopoulos. Trump didn't say yes, and he didn't say no, and one person at the meeting described him as flattered by the idea. And so that's interesting, that it was brought up that he has connections in Russia that could set up a meeting with Russian officials, and he didn't say yes and he didn't say no. So it's odd that when a reporter this year asked him about possible contact between his campaign and Russian officials, he had this to say.
Get a yes or no answer on one of these questions involving Russia. Can you say whether you are aware that anyone who advised your campaign had contacts with Russia during the course of the election?
Well, I told you, General Flynn obviously was dealing, so that's one person, but he was dealing as he should have been.
During the election?
No, nobody that I know of.
So you're not aware of any contacts during the course of the election?
How many times do I have to answer this question?
Can you just say
Russia
yes or no
is a ruse. Yeah, I know you have to get up and ask a question, but Russia is a ruse.
So what you've got there is a lie. I mean, he was flattered by the idea. It was brought up during a national security meeting that the press was covering, and he was there, and now he had no idea earlier this year that any of that contact was going on. Now, you might say, it's not necessarily a lie. It could just be that he forgot. He has a lot of meetings, but what you don't know about Donald Trump is that he has, in his words, one of the great memories of all time. And he just said that like a week ago. I even remember that. I don't have one of the great memories of all time, but I remember that. Now, you might say that's scary. Donald Trump is interested in possibly taking this meeting, even though his advisors are saying he shouldn't. But don't worry, there was a voice of reason in the room, and that is Jeff Sessions. Then the campaign's top national security official apparently spoke vehemently against the idea, asking others not to discuss it again. Trump did not challenge him. And so that is good news for Jeff Sessions because it makes him look like a very reasonable person. Unfortunately, it's also bad news for Jeff Sessions because he had a conversation earlier this year with Senator Al Franken that went like this.
Without divulging sensitive information, do you know about this or know what compromising personal and financial information the Russians claim to have?
Senator Franken, allegations get made about candidates all the time, and they've been made about
President-elect Trump a lot sometimes. Most of them, virtually all of them, have been proven to be exaggerated or untrue. I would just say to you that I have no information about this matter. I have not been in on the classified briefings, and I'm not a member of the Intelligence Committee. And so I'm just not able to give you any comment on it at this time.
Totally fair. So, unfortunately, that's not the video. But he was asked at that same hearing if he had any knowledge about contacts with Russian officials and what he would do if he knew about that. And he said directly he has no information about any such communication. And so, in the case of Donald Trump, it's a lie to say he didn't know. Unfortunately for Jeff Sessions, it's a lie under oath to Congress, which is actually a crime.
Yeah, so I remember a president being impeached by the other party for lying under oath. And I was told that that is a very, very serious crime. Yeah. And there we have Jeff Sessions clearly lying under oath, saying that he had no dealings or knowledge of dealings with the Russians during the campaign, when, to his credit, he absolutely positively did know about dealings with the Russians and thought it was a bad idea.
And he was vehement about it.
Yes. So you cannot credibly claim that you forgot something that happened a couple of months ago where you had the good sense to say, we should not have Trump meet with Putin in the middle of a presidential campaign. That's insane. You insisted on it and you won the argument. But to say that you did not have knowledge of any attempts to connect with the Russians is a clear lie.
Yeah, he also smiled while he said it. Maybe we can input that video.
So I assume that Sessions will be removed from office immediately.
And that would be for the good of the nation, actually. And so that's one of the bad things coming out of this. Now, there's a lot that we don't know about what Papadopoulos has done as a cooperative, a proactive cooperator, in the words of the justice system, or the Justice Department. But there's a belief that he might have possibly been wearing a wire, that he might have been engaging in communications with other members of the campaign, the staff there, and that may be where they got some of the information about Manafort and others, and so all of that will be coming out at some point in the next weeks and months. But right off the bat, this is bad for Donald Trump. Now, thankfully for him, it's not under oath. It's simply lying to the press, which is hardly new for him. But for Jeff Sessions, it's a totally different thing. Now, when it comes to Paul Manafort and also Gates as well, we have some more information coming out of documents that were revealed yesterday. And some of these are odd, some of these are incredibly significant. Here's the significant part. The government wrote in the documents on Tuesday that Manafort and Gates, quote, have connections to Ukrainian and Russian oligarchs who have provided millions of dollars to them. And so when you hear Donald Trump repeatedly claim that there's no Russia in any of that, there's no Russia, well, there is. They apparently got millions of dollars from Russians. Also, despite the fact that Paul Manafort has often denied this, they say in those documents that he has staff working for his corporation in Moscow, something he has never revealed before and in fact has denied. And so that is significant as well. There's a connection for you, financially at least.
Yeah. So, look, Manafort's in a world of trouble. Every day we find out more of his illicit ties to Russia, which he hid, which is a huge problem, because you were supposed to register as a foreign agent, and the reason is so we could know what your motivation is. And he wanted to hide his motivation because he wanted to secretly do propaganda for the Russians. And he hid a lot of things about us, about what he was doing that John's going to tell you about in a sec. And then on top of that, he apparently didn't pay his taxes, laundered money. So he's got a decision to make. That's why Trump is really trying hard to avoid answering the question of whether he's going to pardon him, because he wants Manafort to think, maybe I'll pardon you. And he also wants to keep that in his back pocket in case he really, really needs to pardon Manafort, because Manafort starts to turn evidence against him.
Yeah, and I mean, it was, I believe, yesterday that he was asked directly at one of these meetings by a reporter, are you going to pardon Paul Manafort? And he said, oh, that's it, thank you. And he refused to answer the question. In fact, he stopped the question from the media in response to that. So it is hardly crazy to think that he might, in fact, start pardon Manafort. And considering the amount of evidence they already seem to have against him about crimes that go back throughout the campaign and for years earlier, the idea that you would pardon this guy, that is a level of brazenness that I would have assumed would even go beyond Donald Trump. But there are others. So both Manafort and Gates are under house arrest. There's a reason for that. The government argues they, quote, pose a risk of flight based on the serious nature of the charges, the history of deceptive and misleading conduct, the potentially significant sentences the defendants face, the strong evidence of guilt, their significant financial resources, and their foreign connections. And they cited multiple foreign connections of that they might be able to flee to and then, quote, live comfortably. And so they felt like their passports needed to be taken away so that they would not be able to flee the country and hide off somewhere else, avoiding justice. Joe, which passport? Well, all of them, actually. Much like Jason Bourne, they've got a briefcase full of them. So Manafort had 3 U.S. passports, each under a different number. This year, Manafort traveled to Mexico, China, and Ecuador with a phone and email account registered under a fake name. Now, you can actually apparently have 3 passports. Not strictly speaking a crime. It can be that for certain sorts of consular purposes, you might need a second passport. And there are both private and diplomatic passports. I have no reason to believe that he would have any sort of non-typical passport. But it's possible that that is not one of the areas that he has broken the law. But you do have to love having the fake phone number, the fake name for his phone number and email address. It's almost like this guy thinks that he's some sort of super spy or something. He seems to believe it too because he also has a fondness for the James Bond-inspired password on 007.
And by the way, for a spy, that is the world's worst password.
Yes.
How easy is that to break?
Yes.
What's the world's worst spy?
It hurts me because I really like James Bond. Now he's ruined it all.
Yeah. Well, he's forged out for you.
Also, I can change my password now.
I changed his first of his password. Manafort. Okay, I got it.
Well, it's even like 008.
Yeah. Anyway. But the next one was From Russia with Love. So, I remember when we were having a warmest wiretap debate, you were on the side of let's not invade innocent Americans' privacy and let's follow the Constitution. Republicans were on the side of, oh, so you got nothing to hide and you shouldn't worry about it. If you got nothing to hide, why do you need 3 passports? His subject is something to hide, but he says we're past that because we now have indicted him and we have all the evidence on things he had to hide, including tens of millions of dollars of payments from Russian oligarchs and all of these illicit dealings that he was desperate to hide and launder.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up the money because I'm not going to go through all the numbers because there's a lot of them, but there is some very bizarre behavior when it comes to his net worth and also Gates. I'm a little bit less interested in Gates. So his net worth apparently fluctuates, maybe in the same way that Donald Trump says. Donald Trump says that his net worth, a part depends on his mood. That's an official financial document.
That's true. I forgot that was hilarious.
Yeah, and so from 1 month to a couple months later, at different points, Manafort disclosed his net worth as around like the mid-20s in millions, all the way up to $130 million, and back down again just in a couple months. Now, maybe this guy is just a crazy gambler, and he sometimes he gets high and sometimes he gets low, or sometimes he lies on financial disclosure forms. Even inside of 1 month, just a couple of weeks apart, his income went from the mid-20s to the mid-60s on financial, like loan applications and things like that in the same month. And I believe it's Gates who applied for 50 different bank accounts inside of 1 month at one point. This is a lot of shady activity. And best case scenario, I think at this point, this is purely personal financial crimes. That this is criminal behavior where they attempted to enrich themselves and there are no policy implications, no political implications. But I don't understand why this guy would be so dead set on being involved in Donald Trump's presidential campaign if he's got this amazing racket set up that he's been operating for a number of years. Why is it that he needs to get involved with Donald Trump's campaign? And that's where the non-best case scenario gets involved. And don't forget that this is the guy, when he was in charge of Donald Trump's RNC strategy, who got them to change the part of their platform that had to do with Ukraine. And so that's the possible reason why he's getting these huge sums of money all at once.
Yeah, and as I explained earlier in the week, he took $19 million from a Russian oligarch and didn't pay it back and didn't do what he said he was going to do. And then in some of the emails that we found out of the indictment, it was mentioned that this was a good way to get even with the Russian oligarchs. And
maybe that's why he was traveling under a fake name. He was worried about relaxing on a beach and drinking a polonium colada.
Yeah, and so this would make them whole. And if Manafort could deliver certain goodies for the Russian government, then maybe they're not going to want their $19 million back. Okay,
that can't involve Donald Trump because he just met Manafort several decades ago. And Manafort lives in his building.
And this is very important. The guy, Rick Gates, with all the shady stuff the judges explained, Manafort's top 8. Until Monday, he was employed by one of Donald Trump's best friends, Thomas Barack Jr. And he was employed as part of his real estate company. Rick Gates doesn't know anything about real estate and has never worked in real estate.
These guys are shady.
Do you think maybe it's just a coincidence that one of Donald Trump's best friends hired Gates, who was just indicted, at a really high salary to work on something that he knows nothing about? And you think that Trump and Gates and Manafort are not connected?
That sounds like how Trump forms his cabinet.
And so finally, look, back to the pardon for a second.
Or anywhere.
The reason Trump walks out without answering the pardon question is if he says, I'm considering pardoning this guy who's connected to me, it seems to be a clear obstruction of justice, saying, I am going to help this guy get off the hook so that I don't have to face criminal justice. And there's an excellent case to be made for obstruction of justice if Trump says that. If he says, I definitely won't pardon him, well, then Manafort thinks, well, I got nothing left. I might as well turn evidence against him, otherwise I'm going to potentially go to prison for decades, right? So that's why, under no circumstances, does Donald Trump want to answer that question. By not answering the question, he's basically winking to Manafort. Remember, it's still possible. And we have a petition about this, tytnetwork.com/pardon. If he pardons anyone related to this investigation, he should be immediately impeached. This is the most clear obstruction of justice you can have. And if you let him get away with it, he'll pardon everyone, including himself, and just keep being dictator.
Left with empty pockets. It may be a simpler wrestling game for a time, but I remember walking by.
We are going to end the hour on time.
You know what? It might not work, but let's try it.
Cheerio, believe in miracles.
Perfection. Number 5.
Okay, we'll be right back with more amazing news, including Donald Trump Jr. being a clown in his talking points and on Halloween, and then a devastating story about Brett Ratner and what he did to Olivia Munn and how that record has to be corrected. We'll talk about that when we come back.
Existing wrestlers' names and attires. Wrestlers' looks and gimmicks can change a lot in the fast-moving world of professional wrestling, and the fact that Revenge gave N64 owning grappling enthusiasts the ability to change this allowed them to keep their rosters current. I played this game to death with a friend back in the day, and neither of us were wrestling fans at the time. So incredible is this game. The quality of the game was so undeniable that the next offering from AKI would be a big title. Number 4, WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2006. When the SmackDown series switched to the SmackDown vs. Raw moniker in 2004,
look, we're doing interviews over there at youtube.com/TYT interviews, and we've done
really made SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 stand out as the best title in that particular run was the hugely entertaining story mode featuring angles specifically for the game and an impressive voiceover cast, including the likes of The Undertaker, with a particular brilliant in-game angle involving Eddie Guerrero. Number 3, WWF WrestleMania 2000. After seeing the stampeding success of WWE vs. NWO Revenge, WWE
The United States economy has never been better. Monetary policy is spectacular. Everybody thought Jamie Dimon was the king of Wall Street last week. Oh, it might be Ken Lewis. He takes the crown. That's essentially what happened. Merrill Lynch, and now it goes to the base. Pretty amazing. How much
I do think this is a buying opportunity. We're going to see a stabilization and just a tremendous snapback.
The Occupy Wall Street movement is not a spontaneous protest against economic inequality. That's what we mean by the establishment press. It is a well thought out campaign to bring down the infrastructure.
The fourth, the best game in the original SmackDown series because the roster reflects WWE's outrageous lineup of talent at the time. Here comes the pain merge. The series is hallmark fast action with an added level of technical nuance. After that, a solid storyline mode of the never before seen match like the elimination chamber.
But the president is trying to do it. I agree with this. Don't everything that we can without going to war. My biggest thing to your critics, Democrats in real life, who say, you know what, it's really just a socialist pass one.
I very rarely read in any coverage of Bernie that he's a socialist.
It might not be a surprise, but I know she's not for God.
Most analysts are saying that Hillary was going to win in a landslide.
I continue to believe this Trump will not be president.
SmackDown
279. The game actually launched with a game breaking fun like all your progress. We set everything in the game, and it's still the greatest wrestling game of all time.
Look, George in the field, Thousand Democrats, he's the one that took down Donald Trump. Thank God.
And I get to and if you win, I'm telling you, and you know what? No Mercy is still fun. It's still being played, and it's still being modeled. No Mercy is a wrestling game.
Anybody else anymore, but you guys. TYTnetwork.com/go. This is going to be amazing.
And we'll probably never see the likes of it again. And that's it. That's our list. Please let me know in the comments about how I forgot Virtual Pro Wrestling 64, Pro Wrestling, Saturday Night Slam Masters, and Attitude. And please like, share, and subscribe. Talk to me about wrestling games on Twitter here, and that is F0X at the end. I'm Chris from What Culture, and I'll see you again soon.
Alright, welcome back to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. We have an amazing number of stories for you guys, hence I didn't get to your tweets. So, we'll do that later in the program. Anna, let's do it.
All right. Let's move on to more accusations of sexual assault and sexual misconduct in Hollywood. More men have been implicated based on these allegations, and one of the more recent filmmakers is Brett Ratner. So let's get to that story. The Los Angeles Times has published a piece indicating that 6 women have spoken to the reporters, Amy Kaufman and Daniel Miller, implicating Brett Ratner in sexual harassment or misconduct cases. Now, these are women who had been silent about what they had gone through previously and decided to come forward following this domino effect that the allegations against Harvey Weinstein have had. Now, there are a number of women. I'm going to do my best to detail all of them. But first, I want to start with Olivia Munn, because Olivia Munn had written something about Ratner in her book back in 2010, although she didn't name him. And, the allegations that she's now detailing are horrendous. So here is what she had to say about it. Okay, I don't have the right graphics. All right, so she had alleged that back when she had first moved to Los Angeles to pursue acting, she was working on set for a movie that Ratner was in charge of. He was the filmmaker for that movie.
I've got the exact quotes here from the Los Angeles Times, which did a great job of reporting on this story. Olivia Munn said that while visiting the set of the 2004 Ratner directed After the Sunset, when she was still an aspiring actress, he masturbated in front of her in his trailer when she went to deliver a meal. Munn wrote about the incident in her 2010 collection of essays without naming Ratner on a television show a year later. Ratner identified himself as the director and claimed that he had, quote, banged her. And now let me go to Ratner's quotes about that, which were all lies, and we'll explain that in a second. He said, I used to date Olivia Munn. I'll be honest with everybody here, when she was Lisa, and that was a name that he claims she used. That was the problem. She wasn't Asian back then. And he went on to say, I banged her a few times, but I forgot her. Days later, he went on the Howard Stern show and admitted that he had, in fact, never slept with Munn.
He was quoted as saying on Howard Stern's show, I felt horrible. I said I banged her 3 times, which wasn't true. So back in 2010, we actually covered this story, and it was because Ratner had used a gay slur. And when he had used that gay slur and got criticism for it, Olivia Munn's book also came up. And all of the reporting about it made it seem as though they had some sort of consensual sexual relationship with one another, and that Olivia Munn went on to say disparaging things about him in the book. She made comments about his penis size, and we talked about that. And again, for those of you who might have missed that story because it was 7 years ago, we were under the impression, because it was reported over and over again, that they had a consensual sexual relationship. Entertainment Weekly specifically said that, and then later retracted it after Ratner made it clear that he lied about having sex with her. So they did apologize for it. Entertainment Weekly incorrectly stated in an earlier post that Munn says she dated the unnamed actor. We regret the error. Okay. So based on that false reporting, erroneous reporting, we commented on it, and I unfortunately called Olivia Munn classless because I was under the assumption that she just said disparaging things about him after having consensual sex. They never had sex. He had harassed her. I did not know that, not giving myself any excuses at all under any circumstances, and I feel horrible. Our commentary was based on bad reporting, and I should have known better.
Well, okay, so, first of all, the most important thing here is that Olivia Munn was completely smeared, and it's horrible, so the way that it went down, as Anna explained, is first Brett Ratner lied about what happened, and she had actually the class to not name him in the book, even though he had done something terrible to her. And the more of the details of that story, now that it has fully come out, is that she was new to Hollywood. They told her that he wasn't even going to be in the trailer. They're like, can you just deliver this meal to the trailer? She goes in, thinks it's empty. He comes out with a shrimp cocktail in his hand, naked, masturbating, and finishes there. And she's like, what in the world? And she screams as she runs out. Afterwards, he lies and says, oh yeah, I banged her, in the quotes that we read to you. Now, when we did the story 7 years ago, Ratner had not admitted that he had lied, and there was incorrect reporting that she had said that she did have sex with him, which is totally false.
That she had dated him, not just sex, that they were dating.
Yeah, and so based on that incorrect fact pattern, we said, wait, if you dated the guy and now you're calling out his size, etc., that's wrong.
Right.
Okay, but we had the wrong facts. So now that we see the full facts at here, and like I said, LA Times, wonderful piece of reporting, not just from Olivia Munn, who has 3 different people corroborating her story from at the time, not now, and 5 other women also with corroborated witnesses at the time, not now. Okay, now we see that in fact it was Brett Ratner who was lying all throughout and had done all these terrible things, and Olivia Munn was the one who was the victim, undoubtedly, and had to suffer through this, and then have to deal with Ratner saying all these terrible things for all these years.
Yeah, and look, I know that the MO for these types of people, these types of predatory individuals, is to smear the person that they victimized. And look, even though it was false reporting, I feel terrible that I fell for it. And I just want to be clear about that, because I feel like I should have been more skeptical, first of all, of Entertainment Weekly, and I should have done a better job in covering that story. So I just want to be clear about that. Now let's move on to other women and the accusations that they have made against Brett Ratner. One of them is a model named Natasha Heinstrich, and she said that when she was 19 years old and Ratner was in his 20s, he prevented her from leaving his apartment after watching a movie. And her accusations are so disturbing. He strong-armed me in a real way. He physically forced himself on me. At some point, I gave in and did his thing. She claims that he had forced her to perform oral sex on him.
So, look, I want to talk a little bit more about the courage of these women, because unfortunately, still in today's society, there's great shame and oftentimes embarrassment, and even if it's a situation you can't control. And it takes so much courage to come out and say this happened, and I was an unwilling participant in this. And for Henstridge to come out and say, yeah, it happened, and I'm not going to take it anymore. For Olivia Munn to say, look, in the beginning, she was actually trying to hide his identity, and she was doing the right thing. And now saying, look, enough is enough, man. There was another incident years later. Olivia Munn runs into a Ratner at a party, and he's like, oh, why do you hate me? Gee, I wonder why, Brett. I can't quite tell, right? And she says, well, I'd say dislike, being, again,
super nice,
considering
the situation.
Right. And he says, well, I mean, I'm so nice to you. I bought 10 magazines with your picture on it and masturbated to it. Okay, and talked about ejaculating on the covers of the magazines, etc. By the way, corroborating witnesses at the time at the party that hears him saying that. So, for her, and so Olivia Munn, very rightfully so, coming out and saying, no, I'm not going to take it anymore, and we all shouldn't take it anymore. I love the strength and courage of these women, and so there's many others here, and it's about time that everybody fought back. And I agree with Anna. I feel terrible that in the beginning the story was incorrectly reported, and then and we took the wrong facts and
commented and reacted to it. And look, the worst part is I know from personal experience what it's like to be lied about in the media, and then have people pile on based on something that's not true at all in any way, shape, or form. And to know that I played a role that's similar to that in any way makes me feel horrible. I would never make excuses for any type of sexual predator. I feel terrible if she ever saw that video or thinks that we have that type of mindset, because we don't. Okay. Anyway, this is a very humbling experience for me personally, and it makes you realize you got to do better. All right, let's move on to other women who have made accusations. Another actress by the name of Newman says that she encountered Ratner in 2005. Jamie Ray Newman, to be specific, encountered him in 2005 when they were both in first class on an Air Canada flight. The filmmaker swapped seats with his assistant before departure so he could be next to her. Within 5 minutes of the plane taking off, she said Ratner began loudly describing sex acts he wanted to perform on her in explicit detail. So he was so loud that other people on the plane allegedly heard what he was saying, and she was incredibly uncomfortable. And obviously they're on a plane, and she can't get away from him. And he took complete advantage of that opportunity. He was graphically describing giving me oral sex and how he was addicted to it.
Look, there are acts that are despicable, and there are acts that are illegal. And so I don't understand guys who do this stuff. I guess they think they're used to wielding their power. Especially on a plane, people can't get away from you. They have to sit next to you for God knows how long. And on this show, we had a co-host who told about how she was sexually assaulted on a plane, and women have to deal with being hit on all the time, nonstop. But then Ratner, on top of that, the things that he did to Henstridge and Olivia Munn, which were non-consensual sexual acts, it's just there's no end to this. He brags about how his best friends are the director Toback, who
is also facing
allegations from 300 incidents. 300. And he also brags that one of his best friends is Roman Polanski. Who brags about that? So when you read the entire LA Times story, it gives you great context into what happened. And beyond just Ratner, it is unfortunately, it appears endemic to not just Hollywood, but to society, that men in powerful positions, whether it was TV like Roger Ailes, Bill Cosby, and Brett Ratner and Harvey Weinstein, took advantage of those positions far, far too often, and not just in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, but all the way up until now. And I think that it's a wonderful phenomenon that women are coming out and saying no more.
Right. All right, let's move on to other news. Earlier this year, a nurse in Salt Lake City, Utah, was wrongfully arrested for refusing to draw blood from an unconscious individual who had just been in a car accident. A police officer or detective by the name of Jeff Payne showed up with this patient and demanded that the nurse draw his blood. Well, protocol indicated, and by the way, the law indicated that they were unable to do that because the cop did not have a warrant, the man was not arrested, and since he was unconscious, he could not consent to having his blood drawn. So as a result, Nurse Alex Wubbles was arrested and had to fight to get body cam footage to prove that that wrongful arrest occurred. I believe we have the video showing that wrongful arrest. Let's take a look at it now.
I have this, it says obtaining blood samples for police enforcement from patients suspected to be under the influence. Okay? This was something that you guys agreed to with this hospital. The three things that allow us to do that are if you have an electronic warrant, patient consent, or patient under arrest. And neither of those things, the patient can't consent. He told me repeatedly that he doesn't have a warrant, and the patient is not under arrest. So I'm just trying to do what I'm supposed to do. That's all.
So she had her supervisor on speakerphone to prove that she wasn't trying to be difficult. She wasn't just trying to avoid complying with the officer. She was just following the rules. And then following that, he very forcefully arrested her, even though she did nothing wrong. Now, the update to this story is that the Utah nurse, Wubbles, has settled the case for $500,000. However, not all of that money will go to her. Let's go to graphic 22. The settlement covers all possible defendants in a lawsuit, including individual police officers, university police, and hospital security guards. The payout will be divided among the city and the University of Utah. By the way, just to show you what an incredible person Nurse Wubbles is, she says that she plans to use part of the money to fund legal help for others trying to get similar body camera video, and she will also donate money to an effort to prevent harassment and abuse toward nurses. So she's amazing and a very strong individual who is fighting for something that's incredibly important.
Yeah, no, I love what she did in giving that part of the settlement for others that are could benefit from the body camera video and actually get justice. And I love that we're also beginning to draw a line finally. I mean, this whole idea that cops are right no matter what is preposterous. Nobody's always right no matter what. What kind of an insane thing is that to think? And so, and it's not just a matter of a few bad apples. It's that we've unfortunately given too much power to police in this country by never holding them accountable. So in this case, they were held accountable, and that's a great thing, and I hope it's on the road to recovery so that we can have a better justice system.
Well, not only were they held accountable, I mean, it's incredibly rare to see body camera footage that proves that there's either excessive force or a wrongful action taken by a cop. And then all of a sudden there is like a consequence or a punishment following that video, right? Walter Scott is an example of that. An individual who's literally running away from a cop and he gets shot in the back. He was not an imminent threat, but it didn't matter. The body cam footage didn't change the situation for his family at all. In this case, though, the detective did get fired, which, by the way, he's appealing. And the lieutenant who demanded or directed him to force the nurse to draw the blood was demoted and is now a regular police officer. He is also appealing that decision. I mean, the amount of entitlement that these individuals have is incredible to me.
Yeah. So great to see justice here. I wish there was justice in the Walter Scott case as well. By the way, the cop in that case also planted evidence on tape. We saw it, but he got away with it anyway, because apparently shooting an unarmed black man in the back and then planting evidence is not that big a deal. It would be great if we could actually get justice for all Americans.
Right.
Okay, let's take a quick break here. We've got a lot more for you, including Donald Trump Jr. and his not so bright point on Halloween. How do you screw up Halloween? Only the Trump family could do it. We'll tell you about it when we come back. I have decided that I'm going to get ripped. Okay?
What?
Okay?
Like, physically?
Yeah. Okay. What, you don't believe me?
I 100% don't believe you.
I will get so ripped, here's my prediction, that someone at TYT will say, Cenk, you've got to stop working out.
We're tired of you winning.
So you don't believe me?
Cenk, you don't have time to, like, do your daily duties for the main show.
You don't have time for your daily duties. Because what you guys don't know is how great my muscles already are.
It's absolutely possible. But you can't have Leah run to the food truck to get you, like, 2 different types of grilled cheeses with, like, tater tots for lunch. Like, you can't have that anymore.
Let's see what happens.
You also have to go to the gym regularly.
Let's see what happens. All I'm saying is, let's see what happens. Have I ever been wrong about a prediction? Almost done. Young Turks, guys, we got so many stories and so many tweets here. So let me just do a couple here. Shiroshi B writes in, so the narcissistic moron was flattered by the idea that someone powerful wants to help him get a powerful position. Shocker. That's referring actually not to Ratner, but to Trump wanting to meet with Putin. I am Sock says someone needs to trick Trump to being under oath. Maybe some a well-done steak with ketchup as an enticement. Dana L. Briggs says about the house arrest for Manafort and Gates. Thousands are in jail pre-trial for minor offenses because they can't make bail. And these guys get house arrest. Angry Mr. Bungle says MAGA. And he's got a new acronym for MAGA. Manafort and Gates arrested. Ruth Iverson says about the last story we did, the nurse is a hero. She protected her patients, even at her own expense.
Yeah, a woman of integrity.
Let me just read a couple of quotes here. Tweets about the Olivia Munn story. Kelt Visor says, thank you for taking ownership of that, Anna. Greg Zeppelin says, Anna, error wasn't your fault. Bad info. You handled this like a champ. Dustin Sherlock, this is why I respect Anna so much. Admits to a mistake, apologize, and understands to do better, keeping it real on TYT. And Dr. Schadenfreude says, Anna, that was an amazing apology. I wish more journalists would own up to the mistakes like that. I love Olivia Munn. And by the way, I want to be super clear. I was more at fault with that video than Anna was. She's just, taking a lot of ownership on it. But if you go back and we're fixing that, we don't want to take the video down because I don't want it to seem like, oh, we're trying to cover up for it. And what we're doing is putting corrections as much as we can on that video. You'll see that I was way more wrong than Anna. Okay, let's go forward.
All right. Halloween happened. It just happened. And, of course, you can always rely on the Trump family to ruin a good thing. And, or at least attempt to ruin a good thing. And Donald Trump Jr. did so by exploiting his own daughter and posting her photo on Twitter to make a point about socialism that made no sense at all whatsoever. Case in point, adorable Chloe, very cute, holding a bucket of her Halloween candy, and the tweet says, I'm going to take half of Chloe's candy tonight and give it to some kid who sat at home. It's never too early to teach her about socialism. Okay. But the candy was a handout.
And you want to talk about socialism.
And that's all you guys have ever known. But that's all you guys have ever known. All you have ever known is handouts from your family, giving you all the wealth that you've inherited. That is a handout. Getting candy from individuals who are kind enough, nice enough to give a treat, just so they don't get that trick. That's a handout. That's a handout. She didn't work hard for that kid. She's a kid, first of all. Don't use your kid for these political points. It's so disgusting. But secondly, no, this is not a case of socialism. It was a handout.
Okay, so let's explain a couple more things to these knuckleheads. So first of all, your daddy inherited $200 million from his daddy. Wow, congratulations on all that hard work. Donald Trump's clearly not telling the truth about his wealth, but even if he was, estimates show that if all he had done was put that money that he inherited from his dad, actually a way lower estimate of what he inherited from his dad, in the stock market, he'd have more money now. So, and remember, he bankrupted himself 6 times. In your Halloween analogy, your grandfather gave your dad a giant, enormous bucket of candy, and your dad dumped it out 6 different times in the streets, and we're like, oh, I don't know where the candy went. And then his dad gave him even more money.
Yeah.
And he would have had more candy if he'd done right. Anyway, and then your dad gave you candy, this analogy, but, you were born on third base and thought you kicked the field goal. And he's like, oh, I'm so good. I don't like the socialists. I like capitalists who inherit money from their daddies and granddaddies. Wow, you must be so proud. And by the way, it's not about socialism or not socialism. It's about teaching your kids to do decent things.
Share. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like every good parent wants to teach their kids how to share. But they're like, no, you keep that candy for yourself, Chloe. You worked really hard to earn it. By the way, J.K. Rowling had the perfect Twitter response to this. She said, fill her bucket with old candy left by her great-grandfather, then explain that she has more because she's smarter than all the other kids. So good.
And Look, what's the decent thing? First of all, I hope he's. And I don't want to get into his kids, but what we do is we say, you say Happy Halloween, you say trick or treat. By the way, that's the official right way to ask for candy on Halloween. And then afterwards, you say thank you to every single person who gave you candy. And then after that, this public school that our kids are going to has a program where they donate to the needy. You know why you do that? It's not a matter of socialism, capitalism. It's a matter of being a halfway decent person and teaching your kids to be a halfway decent person. Hey, you know what? And we talk about it all the time. You got to be grateful. Look at all these wonderful things that you have, and some people don't have it. And wouldn't it be great to share that with them and bring them joy?
Exactly.
And we've given some of their toys away to just friends, And we talk about the joy that they had in their face when they got it, and etc.
You sound like a terrible parent.
Socialism. No, it's being decent. And by the way, if you're actually talking about taxes and how it goes, well, in that analogy, the government takes that candy and then builds bridges and roads and schools so that other kids could have a chance at getting candy too.
It's just all of this is always these discussions and these debates are always so fascinating to me because it starts with this preconceived notion that every dollar, every penny that you pay in taxes just immediately gets redistributed to like a lazy bum or a group of lazy bums that refuse to do any work and want to mooch off the system. When in reality, you look at the federal budget, we've been over this a billion times, a fraction of that budget, a small fraction of that budget goes to these government programs, which by the way, repeatedly get cuts in funding to help the poor, right? We never have discussions about corporate welfare. We never have discussions about how we purposely, intentionally invade other countries and start wars to give private contractors giant contracts so they can go off and make their weapons, do their drone strikes, do whatever it is that they want to do to profit handsomely off U.S. taxpayers. That is the type of welfare I'd like to go after. And another thing, they pretend like they don't take advantage of any of the things that are built through taxpayer money, right? The roads, the bridges. They pretend as though they never use those things. They pretend as though they live in like this fantasy privatized world where all those, infrastructure projects never benefited them once in their lives. I don't know if it's just ignorance or if it's just, pretending like you don't know because you're trying to pass off this ridiculous talking point that makes no sense. I don't know.
No, it's definitely insatiable greed. And this clown has never bothered to figure out, hey, how would anybody get to Trump Tower if the government hadn't built a road or all the bridges and tunnels into Manhattan? So let's take away the bridges and tunnels and see how Trump Tower does. But he doesn't care because he grew up in a bubble where you're awesome for being rich. Rich people are great. And as Trump recently said, why would I want poor people in my cabinet? Because they're not good. Poor people are bad. Rich people are great. It doesn't matter how you got the money.
It reminds me of this study that we talked about a couple of years ago, and you guys should go back and watch it. If I remember it correctly, it was a group of people who were playing a game that was very obviously rigged. They knew it was rigged, okay? And so one group would constantly win in this game knowing that it was rigged. It was slanted in their favor. And as they continued playing the game and as they continued winning more and more, they got this like weird sense of entitlement. They started like crunching on their snacks loudly and yelling, and they were super boastful, and they had this sense of entitlement as if they earned it, right? They're more talented or they're more skilled than the other player. But again, for the billionth time, they knew it was rigged and it didn't matter. Like they somehow, convinced themselves that they were better.
No, look, it's human nature, guys. It's not just to blame it on Republicans or anything. So the game was Monopoly in that study, and they had more money to begin with, but they kept saying, like, oh, man, I'm really good at this. And look, I catch myself doing it. But at least we know enough to catch ourselves, right? So in fantasy football this week, I won. Even though I had the second lowest score in the league, I was super lucky. I just played the guy with the lowest score. But I caught myself going, man, I started the right quarterback. Nice job. Just luck, right? And nobody's luckier than Donald Trump Jr., but he doesn't know it.
Yeah.
And finally, I love Anna's point about the candy. Let's say that if you had 100 pieces of candy and he took away 50, one or two of those candies would have gone to the poor or middle class. Here's 7 to Lockheed Martin, right? 4 to the oil companies for subsidies. 37 to the banks for a bailout, right? It's actually corporate socialism where they privatize the gains and socialize the losses onto the rest of us. That's the real problem.
I know how to play this game. I'm gonna have my kid not dress up in a Halloween costume. Disperse like 5 to 10 other kids in Halloween costumes. Send them out to go get some candy. Bring it back to my kid and be like, "Promise you guys are gonna get your candy. Give it all to me, and I'll give them like just a candy corn."
Oh,
real business, real business. That's Trump business like. You know, you get all these other folks to work for you. You do shit, get all the good stuff, and then give them the garbage.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm the best at this. Great planner.
But to be fair, I did start the right quarterback.
Candy corn sucks.
Yes.
You know, my daughter actually likes it. We went to an unreal Halloween last night, and I want to tell you guys about it in the post game. So tytnetwork.com/join, and I'll tell you all about that. It was bananas. I couldn't believe it.
Bananas.
All right, I'll tell you all about it later. All right. Listen.
All right. The CEO of Papa John's is trying to explain why it is that their third quarter earnings were not so great. In fact, in a conference call regarding the company's disappointing third quarter earnings, Papa John's CEO essentially said that the company is struggling because of the NFL's lingering anthem controversy. And he blamed the NFL's lingering anthem controversy on NFL leadership, namely Commissioner Roger Goodell, who didn't nip this in the bud. He should have just squashed it immediately and stopped the players from kneeling, and that's the whole reason why people aren't buying his pizza.
Oh my God. So this guy's a Republican, pals around with Peyton Manning. You know how I feel about that. And this is the same party that believes in personal responsibility.
Oh, it's so good.
Oh, no, it's not that my pizza sucks. It's not that the only reason that anybody buys my pizza is because of that toxic garlic butter that we all actually secretly enjoy.
Oh, it's so good, though.
I know. But
I'm going to be honest with the audience. I like Papa John's pizza. I'm sorry.
okay.
I don't like the CEO.
No. Our job is to be honest.
Yes.
And I don't like their pizza at all. It's super mediocre. But the butter. I don't know what's in the butter.
It's not butter.
It's not butter. Okay. But it is good. Okay. Anyway, so looking to make your pizza better, or maybe your business practices. No, never personal responsibility. It's those damn African American players who care about getting shot by cops wrongly. I mean, if only they stopped getting shot. Well, they want to stop getting shot, right? Why don't they just stop complaining about injustice and how people are getting killed in the wrong ways? You're costing me pizza sales.
Here's what I want to know. Is there anything that black people won't get blamed for?
I know, right?
Right? Like, all of a sudden, they're the reason why Papa John's is not selling as many pizzas as it wants to or should. It's amazing. So let me give you the CEO's exact quotes during this conference call. He said, "Good or bad, leadership starts at the top, and this is an example of poor leadership. This should have been nipped in the bud a year and a half ago. The NFL controversy is polarizing the customer, polarizing the country."
No, that's it. I'm done with Papa John's. I'm serious. So I know I did the Chick-fil-A ban because of their views on the LGBT community. We did it with a lot of people. I found out secretly that they're now going to eat there. But I've held strong, okay? And I'm a man who cares about food. No, I'm done with Papa John's. You're going to blame people complaining, people rightfully looking to change the justice system so that it is more just to all Americans for your lack of business sense? No, you schmuck. You're putting all your ads on TV. You're overpaying Peyton Manning. You're overpaying the TV networks. And not that many people are watching TV anymore.
And not only
but you're too stupid to figure out digital. And so you're like, I don't know. Let's do what all Republicans do. Like Anna said, let's just blame black people.
Yeah.
Well, why do they care about justice so much when they should be forced to buy our pizzas?
There's one other factor that I think we're missing, and this is not a paid sponsorship, so I'm not doing this as an ad, but I just want to be clear. Domino's also stepped up its game, okay? Domino's is delicious and my favorite pizza chain in the country.
I think that at the Garden Sauce. But I think Papa Dacus' line is that he thinks because there's this boycotts on the NFL because white people, because that's the only person people who eat is damn pizzas, they're not watching the NFL because the boycotts
The kneeling is turning off all my white customers, and all my white customers aren't seeing my ads anymore during football games, and now they're not buying my pizzas because they're not reminded about my pizzas anymore. But then you have folks that also are boycotting the other way, and they're not watching because of how Colin Kaepernick got ousted. So, is it all the customers who are in support of Kaepernick's protest and much of the rest of the NFL's protest that aren't buying your damn pizzas? No, he just thinks one-sided. It's just these folks, my like-minded people that aren't watching the NFL, that aren't buying my pizzas. So therefore, they should have nipped this in the bud and not allowed them to not watch my damn commercials anymore.
So whether you want to join my one-man boycott or not, I'll tell you this. The Papa John's clearly cares much more about their pizza sales than they do about the injustice that African Americans live with on a daily basis.
Or freedom of speech.
And if that's your priorities, then go ahead and buy Papa John's. But if your priorities are justice for all Americans, and you see how indifferent this company is to that, and how they're blaming you for their own problems, well then, it's not a company I'd want to give my money to.
Guarantee you, this loser, if he finds that he'll make more money if he goes with the Colin Kaepernick support. He'll have Kaepernick on the commercials, kick Peyton Manning out, and be on a knee like Papa John's. Come by me. You know, one knee will get you half off.
Well, I hear you, but it would take a while because his proclivity is to be with Peyton. It would really pain him to go with Kaepernick, but he's like, how many extra dollars? Let me calculate that. All right, what's next, Anna?
All right. Congress has been questioning some of the top dogs at tech giants, including Facebook and Google, in regard to foreign money being used for political ads here in the United States. Now, this all has to do with Russian meddling in the election, namely some of the ads that were going viral on Facebook during and even after the election. And so there was a question as to whether or not tech giants like Facebook, Google, and Twitter would stop accepting foreign money from foreign countries in regard to U.S. election ads, right? So any type of ad that has to do with American politics. And it seems as though they're very hesitant to refuse that money, even though there are laws that should prevent them from doing so. So Facebook and Google declined under repeated congressional questioning Tuesday to commit to stop taking Russian rubles and other foreign currencies as payment for American political advertisements, despite federal election law prohibiting payments from foreign nationals. Now, Al Franken was the main senator who harped on this particular issue and this particular question, so I'm going to share a little bit of that dialogue with you. He asked the following: people are buying ads on your platform, meaning Facebook in this case, with rubles. They're political ads. You put billions of data points together all the time. That's what I hear these platforms do. They're the most sophisticated things invented by man ever. Google has all the knowledge that man has ever developed. You can't put together rubles with a political ad and go like, those two data points spell out something bad. And he was referring to Google in this case, not Facebook. But he did ask the same question to Facebook, and they were hesitant to say that they would stop taking foreign money. And so at that point, Colin Stretch says the following: it's a signal we should have been alert to, and in hindsight, it's one we missed. And he said, okay, yeah. Will Facebook commit to not accepting political ads paid for by foreign money in the future? And Colin Stretch said, Senator, our goal is to require all political advertisers, regardless of currency, to provide documentation and information that they're authorized to advertise. So some are interpreting that as, Facebook and other tech giants trying to avoid answering the question directly. But it is kind of interesting because they are able to do like facial recognition of photos. Like the things that you see on social media tech-wise are insanely impressive. Why is it so hard for them to raise a red flag when they see advertisements, political advertisements being paid for with foreign money?
So, as always, I'll state our conflict of interest here. Google and Facebook are among our two top partners at TYT. And as is often, not always, I'm a little bit more lenient of Google and Facebook's position and take it with a grain of salt for the reasons I just stated, right? But I think I'm trying my best to be honest about evaluating this. Look, first of all, I think there's a lot of bitterness in the Democratic Party about the Russians stole the election, Look, I think there's some truth to some of that. They certainly tried to influence the elections, as we just saw with the arrest, and I think that's outrageous, and I'm glad that Mueller did all that. But that's not the only reason that Hillary Clinton lost the election, and they try to make it seem like that, and they're partly trying to blame everyone under the sun. Facebook did it, Google did it, we shouldn't have taken ads. But look, it's easy to say in hindsight, but I remember during the election, nobody was talking about Russian or other ads going into Facebook or Google. So now in hindsight, we're blaming them and saying, oh, okay, you should have known because it was in rubles. Wait, Facebook gets a lot of advertising in all sorts of different cash from all across the world. Now, they do have a responsibility to make sure that foreigners are not paying for political ads in America. That is a heavy responsibility, and they should take it seriously. And I hope that they do going forward. So, but just because it's foreign currency is a fair tip-off, and that's certainly something that the algorithm should look at, right? But it's not necessarily 100% determinative, and I just don't think all this is nearly as easy. And this is my bias from running a digital network. Everybody thinks like, oh, everybody's got everything figured out. It's not that easy. You've got to put a lot of engineers on it, and then once you find a problem, then you got to fix it, and it takes some time.
Right.
And so I think that they're becoming a bit of a scapegoat here. But I do want them to take every precaution, of course. Moving forward.
So I want to give you guys a little more context so you understand, why this type of questioning took place. Now, there is real concern about foreign countries like Russia trying to influence U.S. voters. And so as a result, members of Congress are considering legislation that would essentially regulate social media sites like Facebook or Twitter or search engines like Google. Now, they don't want that. Understandably so. These tech giants do not want that regulation, which is why they've agreed to testify to, get these questions or answer these questions by members of Congress. But this isn't about punishing them for what already happened. This is about what is going to be done to prevent it in the future. So I think it's an interesting question as to whether or not Congress should get involved. But I also want to quickly comment on what you said, Cenk, about how Democrats are too obsessed with this component of the story. Just going back to the whole Manafort arrest and possible Russian collusion, I agree that that is an important thing to investigate. But I find it fascinating that when you hear from the Democratic establishment, they only focus on that because they want to use that as an excuse for why Hillary lost, right? But there's another component that I think is much more interesting, which is, did Donald Trump have shady financial deals with the Russian government?
Yes.
That is the most important part to me, right? Because if there is a gigantic conflict of interest there, then that means that he's essentially a puppet for Putin. Okay, he will do anything and everything to appease him, so he gets out of whatever money he owes or whatever financial issues he's having with, lenders in that country. So, but they never talk about that. I never hear them talk about it. It's all about collusion. Yes, it's important. I'm not saying don't focus on that at all, but I think it's telling that the Democratic establishment solely focuses on that component.
So that's a great point by Anna, but that I'd never heard before. Look, it's because if Trump had a financial deal with the Russians, even if it stretches back years, and him winning and then lifting sanctions is some sort of payback, almost exactly as Manafort and Gates did and were arrested for on Monday, on a separate deal, well, that's a much bigger story and a way better way to get Donald Trump out of office. But that does nothing to vitiate their concerns about the election.
That's right.
That's why they're obsessed with Facebook and Google. You guys sold the ads you shouldn't have sold when we could have won if you just let us go back on TV and spend all our money on TV. And if you just let us keep doing the status quo, we would have won. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I get it. You're bitter. But let's focus on the real issues. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that this is not a real issue. It is, and they should definitely look to correct it. But using it as a scapegoat is not helpful to anyone. And I think that if you actually cared about the country, and actually cared to resist Donald Trump, you'd focus on the deeper ties that he had with Russia.
Right, because that influences more than just the Democratic Party or any political party. It has an impact on every American, because it means that we have a president who's not going to really look out for the best interests of this country, but the best interests of Vladimir Putin, because he might, by the way, this is my speculation, right? We need evidence. We need an investigation to that. But he might owe money there, significant amount, because he couldn't get loans here in the United States because he went bankrupt so many times.
Right, and it's, by the way, it's not that there is no evidence on it. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence. What you need is direct evidence from an investigation.
Exactly.
So, by all means, go forward.
Yep.
All right.
All right, I want to share a pretty devastating story of pollution with you guys. A Caribbean island is suffering a gigantic tide of plastic trash, and the images that we're seeing now of the coastline of Roatan are devastating, especially considering how expensive it would be to clean up this pollution. So let's take a look at some of these images. For the residents of Roatan, this is a tiny island. It's only 12 miles long by 3 miles wide, and the task at hand of cleaning this pollution is going to be insanely difficult and costly. And this is people are saying that this is pollution coming from a river in Guatemala, and it shows you what the consequences are of, just utilizing so many plastic containers, plastic products without thinking about where they'll end up.
Yeah, it's a tough one because we as humans create so much trash, and it's hard to put it away in a way that doesn't destroy the planet. And so there's certainly better ways than this. And but seeing the enormity of our waste and literally having it wash up on shore is just a stark visual for what we're doing to the planet on a macro scale.
But I don't think that that's really happening. I mean, let's have a debate about whether this is real, because I think that this is some sort of conspiracy theory, and
it's a hoax by the Chinese.
And look, if it is happening, if there is evidence to prove that there's plastic waste, on the shoreline, was it really caused by humans, or was it just a natural thing that happens? It's just
during the dinosaur age, they had lots of plastic too, and it would just keep washing up on shore.
Plastic goes in, plastic goes out. You can't explain it.
Nobody can explain it. We have to be more mindful because, again, this is not, we're obviously drawing the analogy to climate change. This obviously is not about climate change. This is just about trash. But we've got to be mindful of the planet. Otherwise, it will rebel, as it is doing now. It's not a thoughtful process. It's just simply a matter of math and science. And the issue of climate change, if you make it too warm, it lifts up the moisture, creates more intense hurricanes and more intense droughts, more intense fires, exactly what we've seen. And if you build up a mountain of trash all over the world, sometimes it washes up on your shores. And, of course, to further Anna's analogy, the Republicans won't believe it unless they see it with their own eyes.
Right.
Since it didn't happen to them and it didn't wash up on their shore, they're like, I don't see any problem with trash. There's no problem with trash.
Right, and by the way, I know that this is not a climate change story, but the reason why I made that analogy is because it shows you how much careless human behavior can negatively impact our planet, whether it's through CO2 emissions or utilizing plastic products and disposing of them in a reckless manner. By the way, I want to give credit to the photographer who took those amazing images. Her name is Caroline Power, and she urges people to really rethink their behavior. Also, just to give you some incredible statistics, it's estimated that there are 51 trillion microplastic particles in our ocean.
Wow. Jesus. Okay, now I have one last story for you guys. This is fun. Can I get a blank background? Okay. Recently, the Republicans wanted to name the tax cut bill. And so Paul Ryan thought, okay, well, Donald Trump cares a lot about this. He doesn't care about a lot of other things, but the tax cuts for the rich he cares deeply about. So let's kick it over to the White House to name the bill. And Trump decided that he was going to personally name it. You want to know what he decided to name it? I'm not kidding. The Cut Act.
Oh, my God.
And then the House was like, wait, no, but we can't actually call a piece of legislation the Cut Act. That's what a child would name it. And then they go bring it back to Trump. You know how what he does when anybody challenges him on his position, he doubles down. He's like, no, that's it. It's definitely got to be the Cut Act. Otherwise, I'm not doing it. Like, oh, geez, for Christ's sake, okay, no, but look, all of our donors depend on this. Please don't call it that. It sounds like a third grader named it. Okay.
Is there ever going to be a day during this administration where I don't feel embarrassed by who our leader is?
Probably not. So a senior Hill aide tried to appease the White House, saying, "Look, at the end of the day, it's going to be known as the Trump tax cuts. Don't worry, you'll get credit for it." Okay. Nope. I want it to be the Cut Act. Okay. Now, having said that, though, I'm going to shock the world by turning around and saying he's not 100% wrong. Like, his way, he is about the name. It's just too ridiculous, right? But the way of thinking and doing politics is really simple, and nonstop repetition does work in politics. And so that's why Trump's really simplistic way of thinking about things actually does resonate. If you said, come up with any kind of sophisticated words, which I obviously couldn't come up with right there. That was very Trumpian. The big, beautiful tax cuts, okay? They're going to be tremendous. Anyway, people wouldn't care as much. And if you call it the Cut Act, they might be like, oh, what are we cutting? Oh, well, that sounds like we're really cutting. The problem for Trump, though, now to flip it on the third flip side, is that it's not polling well. And when he says cut, what Americans are hearing is tax cuts for the rich, which is true. That's why it's polling at a disastrous 25%.
Well, they've stopped lying about the fact that it's tax cuts for the rich. They're pretty transparent about it now, which is great. I'm glad that they are.
Yeah, so 25%, 35% disapprove, and 40% are like, I don't know, how many cuts are there in the act? They've yet to make up their mind. But the devil is metaphorically in the details here. And wait till they hear the details, how it raises taxes on the middle class and the poor and cuts it on the rich. They'll hate it even more. All right, we got to go. We got to cut this show. Bye-bye.